Lynda is no stranger to the San Juan Island Library. We've actually had her here twice before, one to talk about the Elbow River and about the book that she published about that. And the other was her book, Witness Tree, which she talked about, and her other books. So we have, as far as I know, all of her books in the library, which you, as you know, you can get through curbside delivery and through the library. And now you've got her in person, and I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Lynda and mute myself and take off the video. So take it away, Lynda. Thank you.
Thank you, Boyd. And it's really a pleasure to be here tonight virtually at the library. It's a very, very special library. I'm sure you know that, but the times that I've been working at Friday Harbor Labs or on the islands, I'm always one to stop in and take a look at what's new on the shelves and visit and say hello. You have an extraordinary natural history collection. I was really stunned when I was working at Friday Harbor Labs on the manuscript for the book that I'm writing now about orcas, that just how full the shelves were of books about orcas and the natural history of the San Juan Islands, the Salish Seas. So if you notice that a lot of books were missing during the fall, that was me, but I brought them all back. So good evening. I'm talking to you tonight from my house down here in Seattle. And I want to take this time to talk together about the southern resident orcas. And, you know, I know that this is an audience that knows the orcas a lot better than most people, but nonetheless, I do want to kind of start at the beginning a little bit, because I think you might want to share this with friends elsewhere in the country or school kids or others who might benefit from a talk that doesn't assume you already know everything, but instead kind of starts at the beginning and says, who are the southern residents? What makes them so special? This is a question that I'm often asked. Why do they matter? What's so special about them? So what if they go extinct? We've got other orcas other places. Talk a little bit about their culture and their family culture, and their you know, these animals are not just random black and white wildlife. They have a very defined culture. These are really best thought of as societies of great antiquity, the JK and L pods. We're going to talk about how they're doing. And, you know, some of that is troubling and disturbing and worrisome. And some of it's really very, very, very hopeful. So that's what I want to bring up tonight. And I'm going to leave time for questions because I want to hear what's on your mind. And with that, I'll get started. So the southern residents, you know, they're called southern residents for a reason. It's because of their home range. So these animals, they, you know, they have a very, very wide, very huge foraging range. Their home range actually goes all the way from parts of Southeast Alaska to BC, all the way down south of San Francisco. They will forage all along the Salish Sea, the interior waters of the Salish Sea in Puget Sound, in the transboundary waters of the Salish Sea, the Straits, the west side of San Juan Island, all the way over to south of Vancouver Island, both sides of the island, up as high as about the Campbell River, and then the entire outer coast of Washington, and the entire outer coast of Oregon, the entire outer coast of California, all the way down to south of San Francisco. That is a very vast area. And they take fish out of this entire area. They need to eat every day. They're not fasting adapted. They have to eat like us every day. And they need a lot of food, as a matter of fact. They need to eat about 30 Chinook salmon a day, every single day, depending on the size of the fish or the size of the orca and its activity. You notice I said Chinook salmon. They are fish eaters, but what they really eat is salmon. You know, they switch their diet actually pretty soon, right about now and deeper into the fall. They're going to start eating more coho. And then later into the wintertime, they're going to start eating chum. They will keep getting Chinook when and where they can, especially on the outer coast. Interestingly, they don't eat pinks, really. They don't really eat sockeye. And you might ask yourself, why in the world would an animal not eat those other salmon species since they're so much more abundant. I mean, 9 times more abundant during certain seasons. But the reason for that, of course, is the size. You know, this is an animal that co-evolved with the formation of Puget Sound 12,000 years ago, and those coves and bays and fjords were formed with the retreat of the glacier. And eventually the forests stabilized, and that created a very stable environment for the salmon that radiated really since the Pleistocene into every possible habitat, including the Salish Sea and Puget Sound. And the orcas co-evolved right along with those salmon. You know, as a species, they've been here in our waters since then. As a species worldwide, they've been around for 6 million years. So this is a very ancient animal, around a lot longer than us. You know, but orcas, specifically the southern residents and the northern residents, they go back all the way to the beginning with salmon. And so you might say, well, why don't they just eat something else? Or why don't they eat a more numerous type of salmon? Well, Chinook were always available. And unlike sockeye that are not, they're around in the summer, but not the rest of the year. Chinook were always available somewhere, and they're big, or at least they used to be. And we'll talk more about that in a bit. So the southern residents are defined by their geographic range, their primary geographic range, all the way from the south end of Vancouver Island, all the way down to California. That is what makes them unique. What makes them specifically unique and very special for us, these are the only orca whales that will come all the way into the very interior waters of Puget Sound, actually all the way to the foot of the skyscrapers of Seattle. That's just so thrilling for people here in Seattle. When they do that, the people empty out of the office buildings, they leave their houses, they go out to the beaches of Vashon Island and Maury Island and West Seattle. And you know what, find me another place where someone can go to the beach and see an orca whale and then catch a bus to a tapas bar that night. That's Seattle. That's very, very special. And you know, that's worth fighting for. And I think that when people say, oh, there are plenty of transient orcas or there are other orcas in other oceans, they're not these orcas. They're not our orcas. They're not the orcas that visit Puget Sound. They're not the ones that come all the way to downtown Seattle. These animals are of place. They're place-based, and their place is right here. And it always has been right here. They were here first. They're an incredibly powerful, capable animal. They can do what they need to do. They just need to be able to do it. So I think that, you know, one of the things that needs to be said and is often said, but needs to resonate with all of us, is that these animals are really signatures of this place, that they mean something to us, not just because they're incredibly athletic and they spy hop and they leap and they jump, but they mean something. They mean that the ecology here is functioning. They mean that the water is clear and cold and clean. It means there's salmon for them to eat. It means the forests are taking care of the cold, clean water that salmon need in the rivers. This is the thing about orcas, you know, they really connect us. Orcas connect the whole state. You can be standing in the Palouse country, wheat country of Eastern Washington, and think to yourself, well, this is an orca country. The marine environment is, you know, more than 300 miles from here, but in fact it is orca country. And the reason for that is those salmon coming out of the Snake River, those salmon coming out of the tributaries of the Snake River, making their way to the Columbia, making their way all the way to the mouth of the Columbia, making their way to the sea, where those orcas are waiting for those fish, hungry for those fish, especially in the spring. You know, the spring Chinook that head back to the Snake River and the Columbia River, those are the fattiest salmon there are. And they're very, very important to these animals. They need those fish in order to get the nutrition that is so critical to their well-being. So, you know, when I say they're a signature of the region, that's what I mean. They mean that the ecology of this place is healthy and well. So this whale is the oldest of the southern residents today. This is L25. She's, you know, she's been around a long time. She's more than 80 years old. And think about that for a minute. Think of what she's seen. She's been around since before the first dams were built on the Columbia or the Snake River. She's been around since before so much of the development in Puget Sound has happened. She's been around since there were just, so many fewer people living in this region. To me, she's an archive. She carries a memory of the ecological state of this place. And she's maybe a lot like the grandmothers that you talk to in your family or in your community. And they say, we used to go here and go fishing for salmon, but it's not that way anymore. There are not as many fish there as there used to be. I often think that if we could hear what she says with her family and understand her language, maybe we'd hear her saying the same thing. I come all the way down to California with my family looking for winter Chinook, and I don't find them anymore. It's not like it used to be, not like my grandmother taught me when I was taught to come here to find those fish. That's what takes them down there. They go all the way down to the Central Valley of California because LPOD especially is looking for this juicy, succulent winter Chinook. This is a very unique run of Chinook. It's the only one in the world that spawns in the rivers in June in California. And you think to yourself, how in the world is that possible? Well, it used to be possible because these fish spawned all the way up in the very high mountain country in the cold water up there in the McCloud River and elsewhere. Well, not anymore because of the building of Shasta Dam, 600 feet high with no fish passage. So today those winter Chinook are relegated to the valley floor, and the Central Valley of California is heavily irrigated for crops like almonds and other year-round crops. There are, of course, millions of people, huge water diversions. It's a place that's become a very, very tough place for salmon to live. So where does that leave LPOD and their family? They still go down there for those fish, but are they getting fish or just a memory of fish? It's the matriarchs like this whale that will be the ones that lead the pods for fish to find the fish, especially when they're scarce. And they're working off the memory and the teachings from the matriarchs before them. And I think there's something very beautiful about that. The sacrifice of these matriarch whales. They'll share fish, they'll find fish. The very last picture taken of Granny, the oldest, believed to be the oldest orca in the world, maybe even 100 by the time she finally passed. The very last photo of her taken, she was sharing a fish. So southern residents, all the way down to California, and they go there to go get those winter Chinook, now increasingly rare. I think one of the things about these animals that's so incredible is their athleticism. They can easily swim 70 miles a day. That's just no problem for them at all. They easily travel that far every day. They can dive very, very deep. They can dive even 1,000 feet deep. They can burst swim at 30 miles an hour. They can fling themselves into the air seemingly just for the fun of it. They're huge. They're absolutely enormous. These are 10-ton animals. The calves, they come out ready to go, unlike a kitten that can't do anything for at least a week, can't even open its eyes. These baby calves, they come out and start swimming. And I find that incredible. And they're nursed by their mothers on a very high-fat milk, and off they go. Talk more about calves in a minute. They're very large at birth. They take about 18 months in gestation. They're about 4 feet long and weigh about 400 pounds. Wow, that's impressive. I think the other thing about these whales is, they are spectacularly social. It's interesting. For being so all business in their hunting, and they are consummate salmon slayers. I mean, the way they catch fish in dark water is spectacular. They are able to find them using echolocation, which is basically a click train of sound that they send out through their melon, through their head. And they can echolocate fish in the dark, which is like a kind of sonar. They can actually see with sound. And as they send that sound beam out into the water, they can point it like a flashlight. They can go over here, go over there, and chase and chase and chase and find that fish. And they have to chase them down one at a time. They're not schooling them. They got to go get each single salmon. And the salmon are, they're no slouch either. They're trying to get away. They're hiding in holes. They're fleeing these predators. And so this is big stuff. And they have to eat every single day and chase down each one of these salmon one at a time. And then they share their food too. Especially the females, they'll rip them up and share the chunks and go right after the next one. So, they are relentless predators, and they are the top predator in every single ocean, everywhere in the world. There's nothing that eats an orca. And, when you see them, like, look at this one, you just know you're looking at an animal of great eminence and capacity. I mean, this is not an animal that's afraid of anything. And they have an incredible ability to hunt whatever it is they hunt. This is the thing that people often say to me about the southern residents. Oh, they're just snobs. They eat Chinook salmon. I can't even afford that, is what people say. They need to switch. They should eat seals, or they should eat, I don't know what they think they should eat, cheeseburgers, whatever. The thing is, orcas everywhere in the world eat what they eat, period. It's what they've learned how to eat. It's what they were taught to eat by their family. And they specialize, which is what makes them such incredible hunters. They're not generalists like a harbor seal, which eats 57 different kinds of fish. No, they're specialists. And if you are in the waters off of Australia and you're an orca, you eat great white sharks. You rip their livers out. If you're an orca off the coast of Antarctica, you're going up, you group up with other orcas so that you can flush seals right off of ice floes with a wave, right into your jaws. It's quite a thing to see. They're orcas that snatch little sea lions, baby sea lions, right off the sand off the coast of Patagonia. There are orcas that chase tuna to death, just basically wear them down and catch them. Transient orcas, the bigs, they're marine mammal eaters, and it's incredible what they can do. They can take on an animal as big as a sea lion. They'll gang up on it and ram it until the poor thing is just basically catatonic, and then rip it to pieces. Each one does what they do. So transients, marine mammals, if you're a marine mammal, you're on the menu, and they can chase down and get anything they're looking for. If it's seals, they'll herd them into coves and bays and eat them. If it's porpoises, they'll chase them down and ram them. If it's sea lions, doesn't matter how big, they can do it. Gray whale calf, sure. And so I just think it's important to appreciate the culture of these animals. Number one, that they have culture. What is culture? Culture is learning that is passed on generation to generation. And orcas have culture. They have a culture of food, what they eat, of hunting, how they catch, what they catch, and where they catch it. It's not just any salmon anywhere, just as you as a fisherman, you wouldn't go out and just wing a hook into the water any old place. No, you'd go to what you knew were the good spots because someone else had told you, oh yeah, the salmon banks, that's where you want to go. And you wouldn't just use any method, you'd use what works. And you'd know when to go out with which tides and which currents. Well, same for the orcas. They have certain places that they have learned over the generations to use the tidal currents, to use the bathymetry, to use anything that is in their advantage to trap salmon. That's why the west side of San Juan Island is such a crucial foraging place for them. It's not random. They're not there to entertain us. They're there because they're targeting those runs going back to the Fraser River, and they're using that rock wall of the west side of San Juan Island to catch those fish. It's like a fish funnel. And so there's certain places that they know and that they utilize to get their food. And that can be where the trouble starts. If indeed their maritime culture comes into conflict with ours, because we utilize a lot of those same places. The prime summer foraging grounds of the Salish Sea are also the industrial shipping lanes going to the port of Vancouver, one of the busiest on the West Coast. It's also, of course, home to all kinds of recreational boat use, especially this summer with COVID. So, this culture also extends to their language. They have language. They make sounds of all kinds, not only the clicks that they use to find food called echolocation, but they also have certain calls that are particular to each pod, and even there are calls that they share across the pods, but then there are calls unique to their pods. This is a very beautiful thing. They have language. And so, the right way to think about these animals really is as a society. And it's a society of great antiquity. They've been around for a very, very long time. And finally, their family structure is very unique. And in nature, it's very unusual to see the kinds of family structure that these orcas have. They stay together for life. The mothers and calves stay together for life. Usually in biology, there's a time when the young disperse, and sometimes they're even chased off. It's time for them to go be on their own and find their own habitat. Boy, not orca families. They stick together forever. You're in that family and that's where you are. It only happens in very rare instances that an orca has become orphaned and it'll hook up with another family, but that's very rare. And it's a very unusual thing in biology. Another thing that's very unusual is this very long matriarchal life stage. I mean, typically in a post-reproductive time, females die. What is their use? They've reproduced, it's time, their time is up. Not in orca society, and in a very few other mammalian societies, not very many, about a half a dozen, including humans. And in the orca societies, the matriarchs are the ones that find the food when times are tough. They help with instruction and caregiving of the young, and also taking care of the young. And so they have such a useful role amid the pods that they continue on, sometimes for many, many decades after their reproductive time is stopped. So we talked about what makes them southern residents, and we've talked about their culture that makes them so unique, that really these are societies. I think the other thing that's unique about them is they live with us. The right way to think about these orcas is these are really urban orcas. I know we don't like to think that. We like to think of them always being in these lovely scenes, such as this one here in the waters of the San Juan Islands, beautiful pastoral scene. Honestly, most of the time it's not like that for them. They're dealing with the noise and the pollution and the industrial development of millions of people. I mean, they're living mostly in the waters between Vancouver, BC, Seattle, and all the way down to San Francisco, and a lot of that is highly developed. And so, these are really urban orcas, and they are the most urban orcas anywhere. And they're dealing with, more than 6 million of us. And you think about how much change they've had to absorb in such a short time. I mean, we've really started coming into this territory, settlers, in about 150 years ago, and it's been nonstop transformation ever since, much of it destructive of everything that these animals need. And there's been no time. It's been a blink of an eye. No time for them to adapt, no time for the salmon to adapt. It's just really been an assault on what they need: clean, cold, quiet water and abundant fish. The very things a lot of us want too. And in that we have a lot in common. I think that one of the things that's been so exciting for everyone has been, of course, the babies. There's been so much bad news about the orcas, really, since they were listed in 2005. It's just been this drumbeat, really, of sadness and loss. And I think actually a lot of people have kind of written them off and said, oh, well, it's too late. 72 whales, that's impossible. But now look what happened. I mean, there have been 3 births since early 2019, and 2 births just in the last couple of weeks. It's been a remarkable ray of hope, really, for these animals. And I think what it tells us is, they're not giving up, so we certainly shouldn't either. These babies, they face an uphill battle. It's about a 40% mortality rate for these babies, so that's a very high number. But I do think we can all think of ourselves as godparents to these whales. what can we do to help them survive so that these newborn calves have a chance? We'll talk more about that in a sec. I think that, one thing we can count on is them. These mothers are incredible in their dedication to the babies. They never leave them. They stay by their side. They provision them. They feed them. They're cared for constantly by the other members of the pod. There's a lot of babysitting that goes on by the aunties and the brothers, and it's a beautiful thing to see orca families together. It's really a lot more like it used to be now, with a couple babies bouncing around with the pods. It's really a source of hope and inspiration, I think, for everybody. And you can count on them. They know how to take care of the young. They know how to do their job. Really, the rest of the story is about us and what we can do to make sure that they can do what they know how to do best. I think it's worth noting that the northern residents that live really from Campbell River of BC all the way north into Southeast Alaska, the Broughton Archipelago, the northern residents, like these whales pictured here, they're doing great. They're doing great. There are about 300 of them, and new babies every year, lots and lots of calves. So why are they doing better? For a lot of scientists, the northern residents, they're the same animal. They're also fish eaters, salmon eaters, like the southern residents. They're the same animal. So what's different about them, and what does that tell us about what's going on with the southern residents? Well, the difference between them, of course, is us. I mean, the northern residents live not just in another place, they live in another world. Cleaner water, quieter water, a greater variety of Chinook, greater variety of fish, and more fish. And look at the difference. Both of these populations, the northern and the southern, were heavily targeted during the capture era when orcas were taken for the aquarium trade. Anywhere in the world, you could just take an orca and ship it. It's incredible to me that was going on until 1976. And both the northerns and the southerns were heavily hit. The southerns more so, actually, though, than the northerns, because they were easier to catch in the waters of Puget Sound and places like, Penn Cove near Whidbey Island, these seemingly perfect little bays for whale capture, because you could just throw a cork line across and go pick them off. And they did, and took about a third of the pods. And, all of those southern resident whales are dead today, but one, Tahlequah. She was captured 50 years ago this year, and she's still in Miami at the Seaquarium, all by herself in a concrete tank. But the northern residents, after the capture era, they rebounded. If you look at the growth of that population, it looks like this. If you look at the growth of the southern residents, it's more like this and that. And so you ask yourself, well, why? Why are they doing so well? And it's definitely their habitat. And it's also believed, when you talk to some of the experts, that really there was probably more harassment and outright killing of these northern residents than was known before they were protected. And the Marine Mammal Protection Act has been an incredible conservation success story. I mean, the thing that we must remember is that the Salish Sea is boiling with life. I mean, there are more marine mammals in the marine waters of the Salish Sea today than in generations. And that is so beautiful to witness. More humpbacks, more seals, more sea lions, more gray whales, more transient orcas, more northern residents, everybody but the southerns. So again, that takes us back to this core question of Chinook, and especially Chinook, since that is their favored prey. But the northern residents, remember them. They are, to me, a clarifying fact. They're doing fine. What that tells us is that, these animals can do it. They just need what they need. And if they have that, they do great. And it's not perfect up there either, by the way. They've got fish farms, industrial scale fish farming up there, which is definitely, that creates a lot of pollution, and it affects the salmon runs. They actually clear cut old growth in BC, which something even we don't do in the United States on federal lands. So, it's not perfect up there either. Trans Mountain Pipeline, that's just been approved. We'll talk some more about that. It's going to make for more shipping noise. And so I'm not saying that things have to be perfect for these animals. The northern residents, you know, they live with their difficulties too. It's a gradient. And the more they have of what they need, the better they do. They also, by the way, have a sanctuary. The northern residents have the Robeson Bight, a place that's just for them. And the southern residents don't have anything like that. But at the Robeson Bight, you know, the Michael Big Reserve, they can go and rub on the beaches and just be with one another and not have to contend with boats or people. It's all for them. And again, it's not perfect. It's in the Johnstone Strait, so you get cruise ships going by every now and then, and you have logging right next door, and so it's not perfect, but it's something. And it's a sanctuary just for them. We don't have anything like that for the southern residents. Okay, so what do they need? Let's start with the little things that matter most. Forage fish. Everyone loves to talk about orcas, these big, glamorous, black and white leaping orcas. But you know what? There's this Coast Salish saying, no little fish, no big fish, no black fish. And what that's about is this chain of food that it starts all the way at the base of the food chain in the ocean with copepods and little tiny plankton, the things that feed the little fish, like these guys, you know, herring and sand lance and surf smelt, this beautiful, spectacular silvery tribe of fish that feed salmon. Salmon are carnivores, and they eat other fish, and they especially eat forage fish. And so when these herring are just beginning to put on some size and head out to sea, that's exactly when these little salmon are putting on some size and heading out to sea. And their job is to get big fast, because they need to get basically bigger than a bird's beak really quickly, or they're not going to make it. And so they need food. They need forage fish. And so that comes back to us. And people like you who live in the San Juan Islands, this is very much in your hands. You know, these beaches need to be kept natural. Forage fish need natural beaches on which to spawn. What do I mean by that? I mean a beach that still has sand. It hasn't been eroded to cobble because it's been hardened with a bulkhead or dock or some other structure. The beautiful wave action constantly sorts the beach and it's constantly being fed by sediment coming down from a natural bluff. This process, this connection between the bluff and the beach and the water, it's a circle of life, and it feeds life. If you harden it, if you cut the trees, if you harden the wall, if you cut the beach off from the nourishing bluffs, then you no longer have sand coming down to sustain a soft sandy beach. It becomes in time eroded to cobble, and there's nowhere for a surf smelt to spawn. There's nowhere for these little forage fish to exist. And so that's why people who have waterfront need to consider putting it back into a natural state when and where they can, and natural beaches need to be preserved. They preserve life. They're not just sand. They're habitat, they're home for all kinds of animals, all kinds of insects, and especially for forage fish. So if you care about orcas, you super need to care about natural beaches and to protect them and to preserve them. Because if you do that, then you'll have more forage fish. Eelgrass, also very, very important. These beautiful emerald pastures of seagrass, they are a place where herring lay their eggs, and all sorts of other little fish live when the tide comes in, and they stand up and they create this perfect habitat for baby fish. So salmon need forage fish, and it's those salmon that feed the whales. So it's all connected. All these different habitats and these different species are all connected. That's what makes it so beautiful. It's that circle of life. And when it's intact, that circle goes around forever. It doesn't cost anything. It doesn't need to be intervened with in any way. It's self-sustaining, self-perpetuating, and creates a beautiful web of life. However, right? Okay, that's Seattle. That's where I live. not too much natural soft sandy beach there, is there? Not too many coves and bays, not too many places for forage fish to be, not too many places for a salmon to be. You know, this is the mouth of the Duwamish River. It's a shipping channel, and they don't even call it a river anymore down there at the mouth. They call it, you know, it's the shipping channel. And so this complete and total conversion made Seattle very wealthy. And this is the river that made Seattle. It's a place today of industrial shipping. And if you come further up the Duwamish River, it's all about warehousing, you know, to get those boxes to people faster. And it's an industrialized landscape. And so I just showed you that forage fish, and we just talked about natural beaches and bulkheads, and well, here you go. So I think what that means is that the places that today still are in a natural state are more important than ever. And we all have to think as a state about how we will stop wrecking what is still good, how we will bring back to a usable condition habitat that can be restored, so that there's a place for these animals to be. You know, in some ways, it's very simple, isn't it? It's complicated, but it's simple. They need what we need. They need a place to be and something to eat. And this beautiful city is not a place that they can be, and there's nothing here for them to eat. So when the orcas come through Seattle, what they're getting is chum. And those chum salmon are headed down to South Sound, to places like the Nisqually River. And they're getting a few stragglers, Chinook, and so forth. But, you know, even this river, the Duwamish, you know, it connects to the Green River, which ultimately is a very important source of salmon for the orca whales. And so even places like the Duwamish River, because it connects to the Green and some really good habitat up in the forests of the mountains, they shouldn't be given up on. It's a time to make the most of what we have and fix what we can, and not wreck anymore. That's what it all comes down to. So why? So this is Tahlequah, the J35. This photo was taken in 2018 when she became the orca that changed the conversation. You know, the whole world felt for her when we began writing the story, and others picked it up about her carrying her calf for 17 days and more than 1,000 miles. A calf that she just couldn't bear to let go. She was the boundary crashing mother who happened to be an orca. She changed the conversation. This was an animal that had been listed since 2005. I guess people were just kind of used to that, you know, losing more orcas, losing more salmon. And then here comes Tahlequah, and people couldn't bear it. It was just so incredibly sad. This mother orca who couldn't keep her calf and couldn't bear to let it go either. And this was the first birth to this family of whales in 3 years. And it was a female at that. So, you know, I told you they're urban orcas. It's really true. This picture was taken by Taylor Shedd. He went out with Soundwatch and stayed with her during her journey as a way to keep her safe, you know, keep people away, but also educate people where he could about what was going on. And so he followed her during daylight hours at a distance, of course, and took pictures like this. So this is, you know, this is the coal port. And those of you who fish, you know what this looks like, and you see the coal dust ghosting onto the water. And so it isn't all happy, breaching, beautiful orcas, is it? No, they're dealing with very difficult industrial development in much of their environment. And here's Tahlequah pushing her calf past the coal docks. That one to me kind of says it all. The coal that's being loaded to go to Asia to further stoke global warming. This is a photo taken of Lummi tribal members gifting blankets to the National Energy Board in Canada when they held hearings on the Trans Mountain Pipeline. Well, the blankets were intended as gifts for the members of the Energy Board in hopes that they would hear the words of the Lummi Nation. You see the late Chief Bill James seated facing them, and others who came from Lummi to speak of their relatives that live under the sea, the people who are their relations, who are the orcas, and of the plight of the southern residents, which is directly in in the path of the Trans Mountain Pipeline, because that will greatly increase tanker traffic right to the Burrard Inlet and a portion of the southern residents' prime foraging area. So the Energy Board got their blankets, but they still voted against the Orcas because they acknowledged that this would increase noise for the southern residents. They acknowledged that the Salish Sea is already so noisy that even a tiny incremental increase in noise would further hurt their chances for survival. But this was in Canada's national interest, and so they voted that it should be approved anyway, which, as you all know, it was, and now it's actually been nationalized as a project. So here comes the Trans Mountain Pipeline, tar sands oil, most carbon intensive oil there is, obviously a huge carbon bomb, right in the way, tankers are right in the way of the southern residents. So, you know, we've got our challenges, big time. But I don't want to leave this on that note. I want to say that the people of the Pacific Northwest actually have been leading the way, and I mean across the country and even around the world, in terms of what we've been doing to try to sustain and take care of the native wildlife of this place. Forest conservation, forage fish conservation. There are beaches all over the Salish Sea that are being put back into natural state and conserved for forage fish. Salmon recovery, land banks, all kinds of volunteer efforts everywhere. So many hands, so many hearts working on behalf of the native wildlife of this place. One of the most dramatic changes, of course, has been the removal of the dams on the Elwha River. This is the biggest dam removal project anywhere in the world. Two very large dams, 210 feet tall and 110 feet tall, on the Elwha River in the Olympic Mountains of Washington State. No one had ever done anything remotely like this. It opened with one action, 70 miles of spawning habitat for salmon. And the really big benefit was that 3/4 of this habitat was already permanently protected within the Olympic National Park. And most of it had never been wrecked. What you needed to do was take out those two dams, and then, you know, the fish could gradually recover. And that is exactly what's happening. The Elwha recovery is a success. There are more Chinook coming back. There are more summer steelhead coming back. There are more coho coming back. There are more eulachon. There are more sand lance. There are more eagles. There are more dippers. This is a true watershed scale recovery. Not only that, but all of the big wood that's needed in the river to create pools and side channels and jams, that's all coming down from the high country. Sediment, a feast of sediment is coming down from the mountains, and at the mouth of the Elwha is Washington's newest beach, a beautiful soft sandy beach where before there was ankle turning cobble. And so it is a thrilling place to visit and see and learn about. And you know, the Elwha River stands for something. It stands for the fact that we can actually look at a situation and look at the costs and the benefits and make a change for the better, and we did. As a matter of fact, Washington leads the country in large dam removals. No state has taken out more big dams than Washington. And there are going to be a lot more dams coming down because a lot of dams are older, they're past their useful life, and taking them out is becoming a sensible solution for a lot of communities who are trying to solve infrastructure problems. So dam removal is going to be something we're all going to be talking more about. Salmon recovery is something we're all going to be having to talk more about. Forage fish, land conservation, forest conservation. The thing I like about this, we know how to do this, you know? This is, it's just physics and geology and chemistry, and, you know, it's not as hard as, say, oh, I don't know, getting people to get along. Restoration is it's practical. We know how to do it. We're good at it. And we've got lots of places we can go that we haven't already gone to do more of it. And so to me, this is actually a very hopeful story. These animals, we know what they need. We know how to take care of them, and we know how to make some of these places more suitable for their needs. And it works every time. I mean, you can count on nature. If you create habitat, Animals use it every time. And so in an uncertain world, in an often difficult world, nature is something you can count on, and restoration is something we know how to do, and we know that it works. And so to me, the Orca story is a very, very hopeful story. And this photo to me kind of says it all. This is a picture taken by Ken Balcom. And what you see in this picture is southern resident orcas at the mouth in the Straits of Juan de Fuca, nailing those juicy, delicious Chinook salmon headed back to the Elwha. So you see Mount Olympus there in the background, and this orca in the beautiful blue water, and presumably going after a fish. So it's to me a very hopeful photo that those orcas didn't take long to figure out that things are getting better in the Elwha River, and they got better because we decided we wanted to make them better. So, you know, with that, I'll just tell you that I have a book coming out in May of 2021, and it's based on a lot of the reporting that I did at the Seattle Times on salmon and on orcas, and I look forward to hopefully doing a real live in-person book signing with you all when it comes out and seeing it on your library shelf. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Lynda. That was quite wonderful. And I want to tell, I noticed that several people came in varying points of your talk. And I did want to repeat that it is being recorded. After a while, we're going to get it up on the library website. So if you miss portions of it, or if you'd like to view it again, or if you have friends who'd like to see it for the first time, it will be on the thing. I also there are a couple of comments in the chat box. One asking you, Lynda, if you'd be willing to do maps in the next presentation. And the other was talking about the no-go zone on the west side of San Juan Island. But I'm going to go to, I'm going to let you pick up on those later. And aside from a whole bunch of thank yous, I have a question from Dr. Cassia Kine saying, I would love to know more about the two babies. So you mind doing baby talk, Lynda?
It's my favorite subject. So, you know, you just never know what's going to come next, do you? I got a phone call from John Durbin, who's a terrific whale scientist, orca scientist. He and Holly Fernbach both. He called me in September, I want to say, and he said, you know, I don't usually talk to the media about pregnancies because you never know what's going to happen, and there are always some orcas that are pregnant, but there's something I want you to know, which is that one of the pregnancies that we picked up in some of our drone survey was Tahlequah, J35. And I just caught my breath when he told me that, because after all, this was the mother orca who had lost her calf so tragically. And the idea that she maybe could have another baby was just so hopeful and so beautiful. And so I thought, okay, let's all cross our fingers and hope for the best. And then what do we hear on September 4th? She's had a little baby male orca, and it's doing great. This little orca, it's been seen several times since the birth and seems to be perfectly healthy and strong, and mother and baby seem to be doing just fine. And so, yes, it's a very high mortality rate. We don't know what's going to happen, but all the signs seem to be entirely positive at this point. And in fact, the whales from the different scientists that I've talked to recently, Deborah Giles with Wild Orca and the Center for Conservation Biology, she's been out doing scat surveys a lot lately. She told me that it was kind of like the good old days. The whales look good, they were socializing. The fecal samples that she gathered with the help of her scat sniffing dog look huge and full of fat. And, you know, she had just a real happiness in her voice when we talked about how the orcas were looking. So good news about that baby. And then what do we hear but just a couple of days ago about another baby? And amazing, right? I wasn't personally ready for another baby just within 3 weeks, but there you go, another baby born to J-Pod. And this baby also apparently is doing well. We haven't heard as much about this baby. It was born in Canadian waters, and it was a little too dark to for the people for the Center for Whale Research to go out and see it. Apparently there was some naturalists on a whale watch boat that actually witnessed the birth. Can't even imagine what that would have been like. And at first, apparently they weren't sure what they were seeing. They were worried that maybe it was another tragic situation with the mother pushing a calf, because the mother helped the baby by raising it up on her rostrum to get its first couple of breaths. But once it got those first breaths, it was off and swimming. So yeah, 2 babies. It's great. And there are more pregnancies out there. So who knows, maybe we'll have a little baby boomlet. So at this point, we're up to 74 orcas. It's still a really tiny number. And the truth of the matter is that they actually punch significantly below that weight. There are fewer breeding animals, obviously, in that total number than there are total numbers. So it's really a much smaller population than that. They're still very vulnerable, but you know, you just have to feel great about this news. It is really wonderful news, and maybe there'll be some more, and hopefully they'll make it through winter. And I think we should all think about what we can do to help these calves live. You know, take that on as a charge. Be godparents to baby orcas. Why not? I want to mention to the reader or listener who said, hey, how about some maps? I'm with you. That's a great idea. And I'm going to encourage you to go online to the Seattle Times and search Hostile Waters. Hostile Waters. It's a 5-part series that we did at the newspaper, and it has spectacular graphics that show the home ranges of the different types of orcas. There are some videos, really terrific mini documentaries, lots and lots of juicy photos, lots more information than what I've been able to share with you tonight. And I'm sure they have them at the library too, these sections, but it's all online and it'll never be taken down. So Hostile Waters, please go there and take a look. And I can make sure that Boyd sends that out to you in the chat too, the link for Hostile Waters.
Okay, thank you, Lynda. And I just want to read a comment from Kelly Balcom Bartok that J-Pod was seen off Fraser River today with both calves in tow, off the coal docks, no less. Both babies are alive, and so far alive and well.
Good.
The whales were in South Sound off the west side of Whidbey Island yesterday, past the west side of San Juan Island this morning at 5 a.m. and seen passing through Swanson Channel around 9 a.m. So it sounds all good so far. So
thanks for that report. That's great news. That's very cool. Good to know. Thank you for sharing that.
I have a question from Christina Trowbridge. Will we ever know what actually happened to Double Stuff? He was my favorite orca, always came up to say hi.
Oh, I don't know. If anybody on this call knows, I hope you'll tap it into the chat and we can share it among ourselves. I do not know.
Okay. Another question about the 2 babies in the same pod. Are the 2 babies in the same pod so they play together?
What a great question. I love that. They're both J-Pod whales. I'd be shocked if they didn't play together. Has anybody seen this out there? I mean, I don't know, Kelly, maybe you know. This is something that is beautiful about these orca families, and I can't stress it enough. You know, they're so tactile. They're very physically affectionate with each other, and they're constantly touching. I was talking with a researcher from UBC named Andrew Treitz, and his team. They were out with the northern and the southern residents for a whole month. Just got back to port a couple days ago. And they were using a drone for a lot of their observations. And one of the things that you can see from above that you can't see nearly as well from a vessel is the social behavior of these animals. And what they were witnessing is just all this touching, you know, mothers sliding along their calf just for the pleasure of feeling one another. One of my very favorite videos that Andrew showed me was of this mother and calf swimming along and just really just touching flippers together, and eventually the mother reached over and rubbed the belly of one of the baby calf, and the baby calf turned a little bit to get an even better belly scratch. It's just beautiful, you know. And so do these 2 baby orcas play together? Probably. I hope so.
I'll mention that my wonderful colleague, Lisa Buckton, has posted the link in the chat box to the Hostile Waters, exactly what you were talking about.
Great.
And she's a lot better librarian than I am, so she's on top of it.
I'm going to ask Lisa to do a little more work for me and post the link to the WDFW's comments and background information on the vessel regulations, which are being crafted right now. This is the time to put in your public comments on new vessel regulations. There's a lot of information at the website. I'm going to ask Lisa to dig out and put on the chat. They have a science panel that's been looking at noise. This is a process that's going to be actually moving a little more quickly than I would have hoped. I think the public comments are due by October 22nd, which seems awfully quick to me. But go ahead and put that in the chat too, so people can go online and take a look at the data and take a look at the information and start getting ready to comment on the noise regulations. These are going to be the first regulations in Washington State for the whale watch industry that do things we haven't done before. We've already got distance limits, of course, you know all about that. This is going to do new things, create a whole licensing system, time and area restrictions, as in how many boats at one time. Would there be places there wouldn't be boats? This has been talked about in your community and elsewhere, and now's the time to voice your opinion about that.
Great. And Lisa says she's on it, so.
Hey. I'm going to be doing a story about this soon. I'm going to try to get it out, I don't know, in the next week or so, but there's information out there now to dig into.
Good. There are a whole bunch of thank yous and looking forward to the books and things like that. So you have a very appreciative audience here.
Thank you. That's so nice to hear. Here, I'll show it to you. Wait, look at this. This is what I'm on right now. Here it is. There it is. It's the manuscript. Orca. See that?
Now, hopefully it'll be a little bit prettier and tidied up.
I promise. I promise.
So does anybody else have any more questions before we let Lynda go? Again, a lot of people looking forward to the book.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Me too.
I'm still trying to find this link for you, Lynda, that leads to the conversation about the regulations.
Okay. If you go to WDFW and you search vessel regulations and Orca, you're going to find it. Boom.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you, maybe I could get an ultimate question. I'm curious about what exactly was it, do you think, that people felt about what she did with her dead calf?
Well, I mean, I think that a couple things happened. Number one, it was just an absolutely boundary crashing moment in the sense that anyone who's ever lost anything, whether it was a pet or a friend or a parent or a loved one, knew what she was going through. You know, we know what grief feels like. And I think she opened up those boxes of grief within us. We thought about the things we've lost and grieved. So it was empathic, you know, it was a connection with what she was going through with a human sense of sorrow and grief, you know. And I think that it's not necessary to anthropomorphize and think, oh, well, she's feeling what I'm feeling. You don't even have to go there. It's just very clear that this is an intelligent mother who perfectly well knows that the infant she's given birth to is not alive and she's not willing to let it go. I mean, you can complicate it if you want, but I think it's pretty clear that she's grieving. And scientists tell us that sophisticated, highly social animals, gorillas, giraffes, elephants, do this. You know, they stand by their dead. They have ceremony. They grieve them. And so I don't think it's hard to understand what was going on here. And orcas are known to do this. It's been seen before by scientists. What was unusual in this case was that she did it in such a public way, in such a public place. You know, here she is in the Salish Sea in high summer, just, you know, circling these most populated places. And was she seen? Sure, she was seen. I mean, we wrote about it in the Seattle Times. I just decided we were going to stay with her until this was done. And by the time I wrote the last story that she had released her calf, there were 6 million people reading that story around the world. I mean,
Wow.
she touched so many hearts and really elevated the whole conversation about the orcas, these families. I think that's the main thing she did. She broke this understanding beyond just individual animals here and there that are fun to watch fling themselves into the air. Suddenly people understood these to be families with ties and connections like we have. And I think that's a good thing for people to realize, because it is so true. I mean, these are families, these are, it is a society that's been there long before ours, and carrying on and carrying on and carrying on. You know, these families never break up. They travel together for decades through waters thousands of miles thick and thin, and that's a beautiful thing to witness. And I think seeing her tragic loss and how she evinced it just touched so many people, and how beautiful that now she's come through with another baby. You know, it's, how can you not be touched by the courage and persistence of these animals? You know, I think our job is to live up to them and what they can do.
That's great, Lynda. And I reminded that that's actually where you began, was talking with them about them as being a very, very ancient families. And so, yeah.
And I want to say too that, you know, I think we should embrace our role. I mean, here in the United States, we have the Endangered Species Act. And we in Washington also have an Endangered Species Act. And we have protected these animals. We have set them apart as animals to be protected. And it is our job, it is the law, that they are to be recovered and that they would thrive with us and among us. And so this isn't some sort of woo-woo quest or you know, casual undertaking. It's the law, and it's the law for a reason. You know, we as a people have decided that the native wildlife where we live matter, and that we will do what we need to do to stand up for them and to stand up for this place. And so that's something to embrace and to carry. And to carry with pride and duty and dedication. It's who we are, and it's certainly who we are in the Northwest.
Thank you. And I will add that Lisa did come through with the link, so you can find that in the chat box. There's also several comments about double stuff in regard to Navy versus ship strike. It seems like a ship strike, but I'll let you all read that. There's one other question, and that is, do you have recommendations for Orca Month Eco Challenge?
I don't think I know what this is.
Oh, okay.
I don't know about this.
Well, maybe I could ask, this was from Christina. Maybe Christina, you could go ahead and type something in the chat box about that, and we could all look it up.
Yeah.
Good. So, okay. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and stop it at this point. And Lynda, I want to thank you again. This was just a wonderful presentation. It's just you're so knowledgeable, and I just really love the way you bring it all together. So thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Good night, you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynda.
Oh, it was fun. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
That was fantastic. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. That was fun.
And Lynda,
Yeah.
are you're able to get at the chat box? Is that correct in terms
Yeah.
of?
Yep, I see it.
And is there a way of capturing that, or maybe we can go back and capture that? I don't quite know how to do that.
Let's see, let's see, let's see. I wonder if you just copied it and pasted it into a doc. I mean, I
Okay.
wonder if that would work.
Yeah, I'll try that.
Yeah. Orca month, October 17th. I just don't know what that is. So, I don't know what to say. Yeah.
If Christina's still on there and she wants to unmute herself, I can try
Hey,
to do
go ahead. Yeah, let's hear from Christina.
I'm curious too.
Hi.
Hi, Kelly.
Hey, Linda.
Hey.
Hey, Boyd.
This is
Nicely
like,
done, Linda.
thank you. This is like the after party.
Right?
I hear something.
Let's get you a cocktail.
Oh, no.
So the
I was actually trying to copy and paste.
Okay, so here's what's going on at my house, right? This is just
Oh, look,
classic.
it's Francis. Hi, Francis.
we're all here.
So here's what's going on at my house. I heard all this ruckus at the door, so I opened the door, and my cat just came in with a live mouse in its mouth, and now she's let the mouse go. So we have we've got a predator and prey situation right here in my study.
Now, is that a transient or a well? That clearly would have to be a transient cat.
And it's a really sweet little mouse. It's got nice fur. Hold on, I'll give you a report. And so the mouse is now on the bottom of my desk. The mouse is now on the trestle of the desk. So I don't know what to do at this point. I think maybe I'll put it in something and take it outside. Yeah, that's what I'll do. It's tough out there, you know, red of tooth and claw.
I was just going to make the comment that the Orca Day is a conservation district event. It goes on throughout Puget Sound. So it's on the 17th.
What is it?
Celebrating southern resident killer whales.
Okay. Hey, Francis, I've got a question for you. I think I might have met your mother. Does she come to the Friday Harbor Labs?
You did meet my mother.
She was great. She did some research on the Nootka people, and I really want to see it. She said she'd send me her paper, and I want to see it. She never did.
She's working on it still.
What? Yeah, well, she must have.
It may well turn into a book, knowing my mother. So
you send me her email address. I want to correspond with her because I'm going to be going to work with the Nootka people this coming like spring and summer, and I want to connect with her.
Well, she was supposed to be out here in Easter and then October, but
exactly.
soon, I hope. She misses me.
Oh, that's so sweet.
She misses her grandson, more to the point. But yes, we will, I think, probably be having a beach cleanup of some sort on the 17th. So we'll organize that through Plastic Free Salish Sea. So Beautiful. You can check out plasticfreesalishsea.org.
Awesome.
I'll put that in the chat. I haven't organized that yet, but I'm sure that will fall on me. Yeah. But yeah, I know that Kelsey Kittleson with the Conservation District is beginning to organize things for the Orca Day.
I gotta let this mouse out.
I'd like to add that Christina, and Christina, I've unmuted you if you want to weigh in verbally, but she's given several links here to the actual events. So.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and I'm such a technic dweeb that I'm not being able to copy this chat box, so I may have to ask help my colleagues.
Actually, so Boyd, it's not just you. I was having trouble with it too. I was trying to do the same thing as copy paste. So it isn't you, it's something in the technical issue.
It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It has in the past sometimes for me. I've been doing a lot of Zoom, but not tonight.
Yeah.
So Lynda, fun little side, and since there's a few people listening.
Yeah.
So this morning, Scott Beers and the Orca Sound folks and David Bain have been setting up this new technology thing where it'll actually, when the hydrophone detects southern residents or detects whales and resident JPod, it'll actually send him an alert email, and it worked this morning. So I'm not trying to steal anybody's thunder, but there's some very exciting things going on in the tracking whales without actually watching whales kind of thing. So kind of cool.
Really good.
Yeah. Well, for a midnight 5 a.m. pass, and it actually says, "Hey, whales are going by."
Okay, the cat is now out of the study and the door is open. So let's hope there's an escape.
Yeah.
It's tough being a mouse. Everything wants to eat you.
Right.
It must be like being a salmon.
May I
man, you were
ask a
not
question? I think I'm actually unmuted. Am I?
Is this Kasia?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see you, and I can vaguely hear you.
Okay. I am a new full-time resident in Friday Harbor.
Great.
And so because of COVID, it's so hard to connect with the community, but I would love to know if you can tell me where to plug in locally here to support the orcas.
Oh boy, you've got a lot of choices. Boyd, do you want to hit that?
Yeah. Let's go to Boyd.
I'm going to actually defer to either you, Francis, or you, Kelly.
How about I start?
You got to go see the Whale Museum, so you got to do that. And then, of course, the Center for Whale Research has their little shop, but they're not open right now, so that's a little challenging. Yeah.
I was there before COVID twice.
So for organizations, let's see, because I just answered this question to someone else earlier this week. A lot of it is, I guess, when COVID is not a problem. But we have there's a San Juan Island Naturalist program, which Giles helps run. And you can connect to that through Kaylee Genther, who's a member of the Marine Resources Committee. There is, of course, the Marine Resources Committee as well. And our website is sjcmrc.org. Then, of course, Friends of the San Juans is doing great work. A lot of that is to do with habitat restoration. I know they'll be doing forage fish surveys, spawning surveys over the winter. There's also Sea Dock Society does some great things.
That's a great suggestion. Yeah.
Yeah, there's also Quiat on Lopez, who do different kinds of Quiat on Lopez Island. I'm not going to try and spell that off the top of my head.
Kwiaht.
Yeah, so they do some interesting things. A lot of it is sort of forage fish, habitat stuff as well.
Sea Dock Society, Joe Gatos and his crew.
The Stranding Network, who works closely with Sea Dock Soundwatch through the Whale Museum.
Hey, that was a whale.
There are two others, friends.
Can't even write all these.
Oh yeah, there's Friends of the Lion Kiln Lighthouse.
Yeah, Erin's on here.
Erin. She's on there.
And
right?
soundaction.org.
That should keep you busy for a while.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm sure if you link with one,
there are others.
Yeah.
So I basically have to link with one group, and then I can go from there because I don't know all the others.
A good group to connect to is the Stewardship Network, because a lot of us come together every month over the Stewardship Network, and if you contact Amy Nesler at the Visitors Bureau, she can provide you details on that meeting. So that's just, I know that someone else did that.
And my audio may be funky. I'm definitely.
Yeah, we're having a hard time with you, Kelly.
I'm getting unstable signal. Yeah, my signal's getting funny. I manage the Pacific Whale Watch Association's Facebook page. If you want to check that one out, through that page. So I'm the administrator on that one. You might track that one as well.
Well, folks, I'm going to call it a night. It's been lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, Lynda, thank you so much. I appreciate this sharing of information at the end, but we really do appreciate your talk. Thank you.
It's a total pleasure.
Okay.
Bye.